Greetings, welcome back to another video of mine. Today, I'm going to be reviewing the newly released Super Mario Galaxy movie. This is a film I've been seriously excited about ever since its full reveal back in September of last year. Mario Galaxy is easily one of the games that lends itself best to a movie adaptation, so hearing that it was being handled by the same team that made the first film so great had me so hyped. Because of that, I've been analysing everything leading up to its release. Every trailer, every poster, every little snippet of footage, just trying to get a sense of how good this movie was actually going to be. And now, that time has finally come. So before we get into the review, I want to quickly set some ground rules so you know exactly how this video is going to be structured. First off, there will be major spoilers throughout this entire review, including discussions about Easter eggs, character introductions, and key plot points. So if you haven't seen the movie yet and want to go in blind, now's your chance to click off and come back later. Secondly, this review will be split into three main segments. The positives, where I'll talk about everything the film does well, the negatives, where I'll go over what could have been improved, and finally, the conclusion, where I'll give my overall thoughts on the movie as a whole. And one last thing, since the film has only just released at the time of this recording, a lot of the footage isn't publicly available yet. That means a good portion of this video will rely on images or loosely related clips to match what I'm talking about. Plus, Universal can be pretty strict when it comes to copyright, so it's probably best I don't push my luck too much here. You might have to use your imagination for a few parts because I'm only working with what I've got. So, with all that out of the way, let's get into the review, beginning with the positives. Getting into the positives, it only feels right to start with two of the simplest yet most important aspects of the film, the humour and the performances. One thing that's immediately noticeable is just how much the character animation has improved compared to the first film. The cartoony slapstick style is far more defined this time around. Characters are significantly more expressive, their movements feel more fluid and rubbery, and the film leans much harder into wacky visual gags than its predecessor ever did, and that's definitely the right call. The Mario series has always thrived on visual, almost silent comedy. Those little moments of exaggerated movement and expression that don't need dialogue to land, and it's great to see that design philosophy fully embraced here. As a result, I found this film to be much funnier than the original. A lot of the humour comes from the sheer energy of the animation. The quick, snappy movements and over-the-top expressions lead to some hilarious moments, and even the written dialogue gets its fair share of laughs. The animation and writing really complement each other, coming together to create something that feels consistently funny and entertaining. Now, it's not the kind of movie that's going to have you crying with laughter every 5 minutes, but there are definitely more jokes that land than you might expect going in, and that's great to see. Another strong aspect of the first film that's been carried over here are the performances. In fact, I feel like some of the actors are even better in this film. Chris Pratt and Anya Taylor-Joy feel a lot more comfortable in their roles this time around. In the original, while their performances were nowhere near bad, they did kind of feel like celebrity stunt castings rather than choices that fit the personalities of Mario and Peach respectively. It felt as if they were still trying to understand the groove of their characters. In this film though, it genuinely feels like they've found their footing with Mario and Peach and can be more wild, lively and funny. And because of that, I really enjoy the performances more in this film, simply because they add way more energy and personality than they did before. And luckily, the other actors pulled their weight too. Charlie Day's Luigi and Keegan-Michael Key's Toad are just as entertaining and fun as they were before. And while Jack Black as Bowser isn't quite as deliciously evil or wildly hysterical as he was in the first film, he still brings 110% to the role and has a number of show-stealing moments. Across the board, every returning actor feels fully committed, and that passion really comes through in the final product. A third awesome element of this movie are the brilliantly choreographed fight scenes. Regardless of what you may think about the story or character motivations in this movie, which we'll get to later, I don't think anyone can deny that this team does know how to construct some amazing action sequences. The fight scenes here are creative, fast-paced and very well directed. The way the camera moves, zipping around, shifting perspectives, putting you right in the middle of the action, it adds a lot of energy and excitement. It keeps everything feeling dynamic the whole way through. On top of that, the use of power-ups is seamless. They're not just thrown in for the sake of fan service, they're actually integrated into the fights in clever and interesting ways. We've got the drill mushroom, which is used by Mario in the final battle to knock the two Bowsers off their feet, the blimp fruit, which is used by Yoshi near the end to distract Bowser to give Mario and Luigi an opening, and although he's not technically a power-up, the cameo of Mr. Game & Watch during the climax is such a fun inclusion. He's actually worked into the narrative in a surprisingly very organic and logical way. Luigi creates him by using a paintbrush he stole from Bowser Jr., and as soon as the little guy was brought onto the planet, he starts fighting for his creator, using many of his abilities from Smash Bros. Just what a cool way to implement an iconic and beloved character into a movie. This movie just has a real knack for that. Hell, even the locations of the battles themselves are really unique and out of the box. I mean, who could have ever predicted that we'd see a bout on top of a floating castle in space, or in a forest while a T-Rex is chasing you down? Nobody, that's who. This team just really went all in on giving the audience compelling battle scenes that will stand the test of time in the Mario, and maybe even film fanbase. Seriously, give it a few years from now and people will be talking about how seriously underrated the fights in the Mario Galaxy movie are. With all that said, while the battles are amazing, I do think the first film had stronger overall action. Nothing in this film even came particularly close to topping the Superstar final battle from that film, or even the Mushroom Kingdom army battle that took place a few minutes before. But trying to top the first film in terms of action is an extremely tall order, so that doesn't bother me in the slightest. The action in this film just undoubtedly slaps, plain and simple. And finally, to wrap up the positives, I want to discuss two of my favourite aspects of the film, the world building and the character arcs. This movie expands the Mario universe in many ingenious, clever ways, while also delivering some surprisingly compelling character arcs, especially for characters you wouldn't expect. And I want to start with Peach and Rosalina, because the extended flashback we get between them is easily one of the most emotional and thought-provoking parts of the entire film. What this movie does is take the brief glimpse we got of Peach's past in the first film and fully completes it. We learn that during the attack on the galaxy, Rosalina made the decision to send Peach, who was still an infant at the time, down a warp pipe to save her life, and that's how she ended up in the Mushroom Kingdom where she was found and raised by the Toads. And honestly, that's such a smart way to tie everything together. Not only does it finally answer the question of where Peach came from, but it also completes her character arc about feeling lost and disconnected. She has that missing piece of identity now, and it's handled in a way that feels earned. But the real standout idea here is making Peach and Rosalina sisters. On paper, that sounds like something that could have easily come across as over-the-top fanfiction, but the way this film presents it, it actually feels natural. It's logical, it's heartfelt, and it adds so much more weight to both characters. It genuinely changes how you look at their relationship, not just in this movie, but even when thinking back on their interactions in the games. Suddenly, there's more depth and more meaning behind it all. And that's what makes it such a strong piece of world building. It doesn't just add lore for the sake of it, it enhances the characters in a meaningful way and makes the universe feel more rich because of it. But as great as that is, I think one of the most surprising and honestly impressive things this movie does is what it chooses to do with Bowser. Because instead of just bringing them back as the same kind of villain, they actually give him an interesting internal conflict. After being defeated and shrunk down in the first film, Bowser is now a prisoner of Mario and Luigi, and during that time, something interesting happens. He starts to develop a kind of reluctant respect for them. Now, it's not like they become best friends or anything, but there is a shift. He begins to recognise that they're genuinely good people. They're hardworking, they care about others, and they don't give up. And because of that, he actually struggles for a while to fully step back into his role as the antagonist, and that's such a fascinating direction to take his character. Because for decades, Bowser has mostly been portrayed as this straightforward villain, driven exclusively by power, obsession, and not much else. But here, we are shown a different side to him, a softer, more conflicted side that isn't completely black and white. At the same time though, the film doesn't ignore who he is, because when he reunites with his son after years apart, that becomes a turning point. His son encourages him to return back to his old ways, to the Bowser everyone remembers, and when he sees how much his army still idolises that version of him, how excited they are to have their old king back, it pushes him over the edge, and he chooses to go back. Not because he has to, but because it's what he knows, it's who he's always been, and honestly, I love that. It would have been so easy to just make him fully evil again with no explanation, but instead, they give us a reason, They explore that internal struggle and bring it to a conclusion that actually makes sense for the character. It's a bold choice, and in my opinion, it pays off really well. And when you look at this alongside the first film, there's a clear pattern here. These movies are really good at taking simple, well-known characters and giving them surprisingly strong arcs. In the first film, Mario learned to believe himself and push forward no matter what, while Luigi learned to find his courage even when he was terrified. And now in this film, Peach and Rosalina are given deeply emotional backstories that expands who they are, and Bowser gets a full-on character arc with an actual internal conflict and resolution. It's honestly kind of wild how much effort is being put into this side of things, because these movies could have easily just been focused on spectacle, big action, big visuals, lots of fan service, and called it a day. But instead, they go the extra mile. They balance those incredible fight scenes with genuinely heartfelt moments and meaningful character development, and for me, that's what really elevates this movie. It's not just fun, it's actually trying to give fans a lasting experience, and that's why it's easily my favourite part of the movie. Next, it's time to talk about the negatives, because as much as I do enjoy this film, no movie is flawless and this one definitely has a few noticeable issues, and more importantly, they're the kind of issues that feel like they could have been fixed with just a bit more focus. The biggest problem for me is the story, or honestly, the lack of a clear one, and this is one aspect that the first film did much better than this one. That movie had a really strong, focused narrative. It gave us a surprisingly compelling, unique and organic origin story for Mario and Luigi, and then built that into a consistently engaging adventure. Everything flowed naturally and every major character had a clear reason to be there. Mario wanted to save Luigi, Peach wanted to protect her kingdom, and Toad wanted to prove himself. Simple motivations sure, but effective. They kept the story moving and they made every moment feel purposeful. But in this film, it's kind of hard to pin down what the main story even is. You can't really say it's about Peach and Rosalina discovering their bond, because that only takes up a small portion of the runtime. But you also can't fully say it's about stopping Bowser, because for a large chunk of the film, he's not the main antagonist. So what we end up with is a narrative that feels split, and not particularly in a good way. It's like the movie is trying to juggle multiple big ideas at once, but never fully commits to any of them. Instead of one strong central storyline, we get a kind of 50-50 split between different plot threads that don't always get the attention they deserve. And because of that, the pacing starts to suffer. The film ends up feeling like a sequence of conversations and action scenes rather than a steadily progressing story. Now, don't get me wrong, the character interactions are fun and the action is great, but that alone isn't enough to carry an entire movie. You need that sense of progression, that feeling that things are building towards something, and here, it just kind of drifts at times. There were moments where I found myself thinking, this is enjoyable, but where is this actually going? And that's something I never felt with the first film, because that story always had momentum. Now, to be fair, this isn't a complete deal breaker. The character arcs we talked about earlier involving Peach, Rosalina and Bowser are all great, and I'm really glad they exist because they add a lot to the Mario universe, and I think the individual scenes that focus on those character arcs are brilliant and are put into the story in a good way. But I just think that the ways those ideas were presented into the narrative could have been handled better, if that makes sense. With a bit more focus, this could have been a much tighter and more compelling narrative. Another issue that ties directly into the weak plot is the lack of clear character motivations, because outside of Peach, most of the main cast doesn't really have a strong reason to be doing what they're doing. Peach's motivation works, the Loomis tell her that Rosalina's in danger, and she takes it upon herself to go save her. That makes sense and it fits her character perfectly. But Mario and Luigi? They don't really have a strong motivation in my opinion. The film expects us to believe that they would immediately drop everything they're doing and head off to a completely unknown galaxy to save Peach, but that doesn't really line up with what we've been already shown in this movie universe, because the first movie established over and over again that Peach is more than capable, she's strong, independent, and fully able to handle herself on a quest. On top of that, she literally leaves them a note telling them she'll be fine and that they should stay behind and look after the Mushroom Kingdom. So for them to just ignore that and leave anyway, it feels off. It kind of goes against their characters. A more logical approach would have been to have Mario and Luigi join Peach from the start on the mission to save Rosalina. That way, everyone has a clear, shared goal. You can still have Bowser Jr. show up, free Bowser, and ambush them along the way. That way, the conflict still works, but now it's built on a more solid foundation. But as it stands, the motivations aside from Peach's just feel a bit undercooked, and that ends up weakening the overall story. Now this last point isn't really a complete problem with the movie, just more of a mixed bag, and that's to do with the new characters that are introduced. Two of them are very fun and well implemented inclusions, and two of them feel shockingly underutilised. Beginning with Rosalina, I'm disappointed with her role in the story. The first 5 minutes trick you into thinking she's going to be a major character, but after she gets kidnapped by Bowser Jr., she's only given about 10 to 15 minutes worth of screen time max. Which is such a shame because she's the face of the entire Mario Galaxy series and deserves to be a main factor into its plot, but she's unfortunately stuck in a cage for the entire movie until the very end. Hell, I'm not even opposed to the idea of having somebody be kidnapped. I'm one of those people who really liked the fact that Luigi was captured by Bowser in the first film, because it gave Mario a very understandable motivation as to why he wanted to go on this dangerous quest. Plus, at least in that film they cut back to Luigi fairly often. Here, after Rosalina gets kidnapped, she's only given like 2 hour scenes in the middle and then one extended scene during the climax. They definitely could have given her more screen time. Not to mention, Brie Larson's performance as Rosalina wasn't anything special. It's not awful, but it's very much in line with Anya Taylor-Joy's performance as Peach in the original, where it sounds as if she hasn't figured out the quirks of her character yet. Maybe she'll get better if Rosalina appears in the upcoming third movie, but who knows. Also, I feel like Yoshi kind of loses his groove after the first act. He's an integral character to the first 20 minutes or so, and has plenty of cute moments, but once we enter the second act, he basically just becomes dead weight, more like a tool for Mario or Luigi to use whenever they need him, rather than his own character. Also, I think it would have been better if they just used Yoshi voice clips from the games for the entire performance, rather than Donald Glover. I feel like that would have just been way cuter. But whatever, it's not a big deal. But to end on a positive note, the other two characters in this film are fantastic additions. Bowser Jr. was handled a lot better than I was expecting. I thought he was going to be completely overshadowed by Bowser, as it's tough to fall in line with that big personality. But no, he definitely holds his own with his own amount of charm. He's smart, he's cunning, he's swift, and I like the fact he uses all these personality traits to swerve Bowser back to being evil in a very believable way. Plus, I like the dynamic he has with Kamek, sort of seeing him as an annoying old man figure. And I surprisingly quite liked Benny Safdie's performance. It sounded very childlike and mischievous and in line with what we know of Bowser Jr. from the games. And it was much better in the final product as opposed to the trailers, so props go to there. I also liked the addition of Fox McCloud. At first, I was worried he was going to distract from the fact that this is a Mario movie first and foremost, as the poster we got shown a week or two before the film came out made it seem as if he was going to be a major character throughout the entire film. But thankfully he's not. He's introduced towards the end, meaning it's just a cool cameo that doesn't distract from the fact that this is a Mario movie, and it doesn't turn it into a Nintendo or Smash Bros film. And I quite like him as a character too. I'm not too familiar with Star Fox, but Fox himself comes across as a badass soldier who isn't afraid to take anything face on, and I think Glenn Powell's performance really certifies these traits too. And now, here we are at the conclusion. You've heard me both praise and criticise this movie. You're probably wondering what my general thoughts on it are. Well, I can't lie, it's good. I like it. Yeah, I know that's not the general consensus among quote-unquote film critics, but this movie just has a boatload of charm and whimsy, likeable characters with some compelling character arcs, awesome action and music, and just an overall sense of passion and effort. You can tell just by watching it that the makers were trying to give Mario fans the best experience they could possibly ask for, and I think that passion really shines through. Now, I don't think it's anything great, and it's definitely not as good as the first film, but there's way too many good things in it to say it's bad. I honestly think this is an okay choice if you're just looking for a film to put a smile on your face, while also offering just enough interesting conflict and character arcs to keep you engaged. I guess most people aren't a fan of this, but for me, I think it's a good enough time. I've been Too Bad Waluigi Time, and I hope you enjoyed my review. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And be sure to check out my other content if you want to watch something similar to this, and stay tuned for more. Thank you for watching.